There are days when you look at your life and whisper to yourself, I should be further by now. And in that whisper, there's a quiet urge. But slow is not backward. Slow is the breath the universe takes before unfolding the next chapter. Think of a seed resting beneath the soil. Nothing looks different from the surface, yet something is pulsing, preparing, reshaping its structure. That's you. And those timelines you didn't choose, those versions of yourself you never lived, they hover at the edge of your awareness, the way distant stars glow long before dawn. They're not here to haunt you, they're here to remind you. Becoming takes time. As you release the tension in your shoulders, unclench your jaw, and let breath fall lower into the belly, reality softens its edges. It responds not to force, but to frequency. We've been taught to hustle, to strain, to push outcomes into place with sheer effort. Yet reality is less like a rock you sculpt, and more like water that takes the shape of the container you become inside. Today, we're not here to bend reality by will. We are here to align with the quiet rhythm that allows reality to reveal itself. You may look back and see crossroads. You didn't take jobs declined, relationships left behind, cities you never moved to, and maybe, late at night, you wonder who you would be if you had said yes. But not every open door is a blessing. Some are disasters wearing perfume. Sometimes life protects you through closed paths. Not choosing is not always failure. Sometimes it's intuition in disguise. The universe folds away versions of you that would fracture the integrity of who you truly are. And as you gaze backward, be gentle with the person you once were. That younger self carried less light, fewer answers, thinner boundaries. They did not sabotage you. They sheltered you with the only tools they had. You survived because of them, not in spite of them. Hold them the way you would hold a frightened child, with tenderness, not judgment. Forgiveness is not an intellectual exercise. It is a loosening of the knots that keep you tethered to yesterday. When you shift the emotional meaning of the past, the quantum field rearranges the probabilities of your future. You can't change the event, but you can change the signature it left in your nervous system, and that changes everything. Regret compresses your timeline. Gratitude expands it. It's not magic. It's neurology dancing with possibility. Progress doesn't unfold in a straight line. Growth spirals. You return to familiar themes at higher levels of awareness. It feels like repetition, but it's evolution. The challenge you face today might look like the one from years ago, but notice how differently you breathe through it. Notice how your voice steadies. That is the spiral rising. And when you compare yourself to others, you leave your lane. Their timeline is written in a language your nervous system was never designed to translate. You can't be late for a train that only arrives for you. Comparison is the quickest way to abandon your own soul's contract. When you stop scanning the horizon and return to the texture of your own breath, your path appears. Some part of you clings to the story of should have. I should have known better. I should have acted sooner. But those sentences are the ghosts of a timeline you no longer belong to. The moment you soften that voice, energy begins to return home. The past is not a prison unless you continue to feed it. Release the weight of what might have been, and watch how space opens for what can still be. Your heart and your brain carry rhythms, electromagnetic signatures. When they synchronize, it's like tuning two instruments to the same key. Suddenly, noise turns into harmony. You respond instead of react. People who once triggered you now simply reveal places inside you that are softening. When coherence rises, life feels less like chaos and more like conversation. You're not forcing outcomes anymore. You're listening. In quiet moments, you may feel like life is frozen. Plans stall. Opportunities drift. Conversations hang unfinished. It's tempting to panic, to assume you've done something wrong. But often, what looks like stuckness is simply the universe rearranging the furniture behind the scenes. When the exterior doesn't move, the interior is being renovated. Creativity is being reorganized. Synchronicity is being cued. And speaking of synchronicity, those repeating numbers, familiar names, strange coincidences, they are not glitches. They are nudges, like gentle taps on the shoulder saying, "This way." But when you ignore them, when you drown them in skepticism, you lower the volume of your own internal compass. Start paying attention, not with superstition, but with curiosity. Curiosity is how your nervous system learns to trust again. Every choice you make, even the ones you don't, broadcasts a signal. Every time you walk away from the wrong room, you tune closer to the right one. Even silence is a choice. Even rest is momentum. There is a thread through your life that has never broken. Though sometimes you lost sight of it, it has been weaving, gathering moments into meaning. And when you breathe slowly, this weaving becomes visible. Old versions of you begin to dissolve like ink in water. The timeline you collapsed into yesterday loosens its grip. You step onto a different track, not through effort, but through awareness. New thoughts lead to new emotions. New emotions alter the way particles dance around you. That's not poetry, it's physics. When you think you're behind, remember this: nothing truly aligned with you can ever be lost. If something slipped away, it wasn't yours. It was a lesson wearing the mask of desire. Your job is not to chase. Your job is to become receptive. Think of yourself as a lighthouse. You do not run into the storm. You hold your light steady so ships can find you. Tomorrow morning, when your eyes first open and consciousness flickers awake, you will experience the purest version of yourself. The old self hasn't fully loaded yet. Before memories rush back, before yesterday's emotions catch you, pause. Don't collapse into the script you've memorized. Place your hand over your heart. Feel warmth, meeting warmth. Whisper softly, "Today, I choose the version of me that has been waiting." And notice how your body responds. Notice how the air tastes different. That single decision can redirect a day, a month, a life. You don't need to be perfect. You only need to remember more often than you forget. Every time you return to breath, you weaken the gravity of the old self. And one day, without fireworks or applause, you will realize you're no longer trying to manifest a new reality. You've become the frequency that reality bends around. Life doesn't change when you tighten your grip. It changes when you unclench, when you trust the timing of your own breath, when you stop performing for a world that doesn't know your blueprint. The universe is not impressed by tension. It listens to tone, and tone is vibration. So tonight, let the mind quiet. Let the heart soften. Let the breath deepen. Reality will follow your exhale. Not because you forced it, but because you finally remembered who is watching it. 1. Spiral evolution. There's a rhythm to your growth that you may not notice at first. It doesn't unfold the way we were taught in school: clean chapters, tidy conclusions, leçons passées, move on. Instead, it moves like a spiral. You circle back to themes you thought you had buried. Old emotions rise again. Familiar patterns knock on the door of your awareness. And you wonder, why am I here again? The instinct is to assume failure. But the truth is far more generous. You're not back at the same level. You're one rotation higher on the spiral. Think about how seasons return, not as repetition, but as maturation. Spring revisits the earth each year, but not as the same spring. The soil is older, roots have thickened, branches remember sunlight better than they did the year before. Trees grow rings from this spiral rhythm. Each ring is a record of survival, adaptation, deepening. Humans grow rings too, just less visibly. They form in our nervous systems, in the way we breathe through discomfort, in the way we hold our boundaries. When life brings you back to an old wound, it's not because you failed to heal. It's because you now carry the capacity to see more of what still lives in that wound. You have new language, new perspective, new patience, a higher vantage point. Healing doesn't arrive all at once. It emerges layer by layer, like a seashell, adding quiet swirls over time. From above, each turn looks like a circle, but tilt the shell, and you'll see each circle is a step upward. There was a time when certain situations broke you open. A comment from someone you trusted, a rejection, a disappointment that echoed in your ribs. Back then, your emotional vocabulary was smaller. Your nervous system hadn't experienced enough to trust its own resilience. So you collapsed. But later, when life presents a similar scenario, notice something subtle. Your breath doesn't catch quite as hard. You pose. You respond instead of react. That pause, that tiny, sacred gap is evidence of the spiral. We often think growth means never encountering old triggers again. But growth is measured not by avoidance, but by the distance between impulse and response. The spiral gives you that distance. It doesn't erase the lesson. It widens the space around it. Imagine a spiral staircase. You loop around the same center post again and again, but each time your head is higher, your view expands. At the first turn, you see only the floor where you started. At the second, you catch the window. By the fourth, you can see the entire room. You're still circling the same emotional axis: fear of abandonment, lack of worth, need for approval. But your altitude changes everything. Life teaches you in spirals because linear growth is too brittle. If you learned a lesson once and never revisited it, the truth would sit on the surface of your mind, like cheap paint. Spiral learning sinks into bone. It becomes wisdom. It becomes instinct. Think of music. A melody returns again and again in a song, but each time with new harmony, new instruments, new dynamics. Repetition is not redundancy, it's refinement. Your spirit writes music the same way you revisit themes until they harmonize with who you are becoming. Many people misinterpret this return. They say, "Why am I attracting the same type of person? The same challenge, the same emptiness?" But notice the small shifts. Before, you ignored red flags. Now, you feel them in your gut. Before, you chased validation. Now, you pause and ask, is this aligned? That pause is elevation. The spiral doesn't ask you to be perfect. It asks you to be slightly more aware with each turn. And yes, it's true. Sometimes life brings a lesson back quietly. Sometimes loudly. Sometimes it knocks. Sometimes it kicks the door open. Not because life is cruel, but because your capacity has increased. What once would have drowned you is now an opportunity to practice buoyancy. Imagine teaching someone to swim. You wouldn't leave them in the deep end on their first day. You'd let them touch the floor. Later, you'd bring them where their toes can barely graze. Eventually, you'd let them float entirely unsupported. Spiral evolution is like that. You build muscle, not physical muscle, but emotional endurance, psychological range, spiritual gravity. Don't underestimate gravity. You feel it when you hold yourself together in moments you once would have crumbled. You feel it when you can listen without defending yourself. You feel it when you can say no without guilt. That's the spiral strengthening your core. And yes, sometimes the spiral brings back joy, too. Old passions rekindle. Childhood dreams wake up. You might feel compelled to paint again, or sing, or learn a language you once adored. The spiral doesn't only return pain, it returns play, creativity, curiosity. When these joys knock, answer them. They're not nostalgia. They're invitations to reclaim pieces of yourself left behind. Let's talk about the meaning of old events shifting. An argument from 10 years ago might still burn in memory until one day it doesn't, not because the event changed, but because you did. Your nervous system metabolized the emotion. You built enough safety within yourself that the past lost its authority. That's the spiral collapsing a timeline. Higher altitude also changes responsibility. At a lower turn, you blame. At a higher turn, you understand. Here still, you forgive. Eventually, you thank. Gratitude is the spiral summit. It means you've integrated the lesson rather than resented it. You don't need to rush this ascent. Spirals are patient. They move at the speed of readiness. Even when you feel stuck, growth is happening in micro-adjustments like tectonic plates shifting beneath the earth. You rarely feel the movement, but earthquakes of transformation come from years of unseen pressure. One day, you'll wake up to a familiar problem and realize there's no emotional charge left. No spike of adrenaline, no contraction in the belly, just spaciousness. That spaciousness is not numbness, it's mastery. It's the universe whispering. You've completed this turn, and the spiral continues. You will not graduate from being human. You will not reach a place free from discomfort. But discomfort itself will change flavor. It becomes information rather than punishment. It becomes a compass rather than a cage. As you rise, environments shift. People drift. New faces emerge. Not because you've become better, but because your frequency has become truer when you no longer resonate with chaos. Chaos cannot hold you. Remember this. Every version of you that ever existed still stands somewhere on that spiral. They're not mistakes. They are steps. And when you feel the ache of an old wound resurfacing, place your hand over your heart and whisper, "We're higher now. We can handle this." That's not denial. That's integration. So the next time life loops you back to familiar territory, don't ask, "Why again?" Ask, "What else can I see from here?" The view is different each time. The air is thinner. The light, kinder. You're not repeating. You're returning with more capacity. You're not stuck. You're spiraling upward. And the spiral always leads home. 2. Forgiving the former self. There's a moment, quiet and almost imperceptible, when you realize the person you used to be was not your enemy. They were not trying to ruin your life or sabotage your future. They were surviving with the small lantern of awareness they carried at the time. When you look back now with broader vision, with steadier breath, it's easy to judge. It's easy to say, "How could I have been so blind?" But blindness is never chosen. It's simply the absence of light you hadn't earned yet. You must understand something deeply human. Every version of you acted with the information, emotional maturity, and nervous system capacity available in that season. That's not negligence. That's nature. If you had been able to choose differently back then, you would have. The fact that you didn't means those pathways had not yet been built in your brain, or those truths had not yet unfolded in your heart. Take a slow breath as you sit with this. Place your hand gently over your chest. Feel the warmth travel inward. That gesture alone is a bridge between who you are today and who you were yesterday. When you whisper, "Thank you for doing your best," it might feel unnatural at first, almost embarrassing, but something in your nervous system hears it, softens, loosens. That is not pretend. That is biology meeting compassion. The former self is like a child, learning to walk. They stumble, reach for the wrong furniture, fall more than they stand. Yet we never scold a toddler for not sprinting. We cheer, we encourage, we clap for their smallest attempts. Imagine if you treated that younger version of yourself with the same tenderness. Instead of harsh analysis, what if you offered witness, instead of tearing them apart? What if you held space, somewhere along the road? We learn to criticize our past selves as a way to prove we've grown. But growth doesn't require shame. Shame freezes the timeline. Compassion keeps it moving. Think about the times you chose someone who wasn't good for you. Maybe you were lonely. Maybe your self-worth was bruised. Maybe you had never known what healthy felt like. That wasn't stupidity. It was instinct searching for comfort. The former you reached out in darkness, because the body cannot wait for perfect conditions to belong. Forgiveness here is not permission. It's understanding. Think about the opportunities you walked past, the dreams you let dust gather on. You might believe you were lazy, or covarde, or unmotivated. But look deeper. Perhaps fear was guarding a wound you weren't ready to examine. Perhaps your nervous system equated visibility with danger. Perhaps your ancestors handed you scripts of survival that taught you to shrink to stay safe. None of this makes you weak. It makes you human. Forgiveness is not about excusing the past. It's about releasing the grip it has on your breath. You cannot evolve if you keep shaming the version of you who laid the first bricks. Imagine yourself standing in a long hallway. Each door is a year of your life. Behind each one is a version of you writing pages in the dark. They didn't know the plot twists or the ending. They only had what they had. When you open those doors and glare, they shrink. But if you kneel and say, "Thank you for getting me this far," they exhale. Their hands stop trembling, and the energy they were holding returns to you. Forgiveness is retrieval. When you judge the person you used to be, you imprison parts of your soul in the past. Your energy gets stuck in timelines of regret. Your body tightens as if bracing for mistakes already made. It holds you hostage. But when you forgive, something remarkable happens. Tension melts. Breath deepens. The chest warms. The present moment lets you in. Your nervous system stops fighting ghosts. It might help to imagine the former you sitting across the table, their eyes tired, their voice shaking. Ask them, gently, "Why did you choose that?" Let them answer. You'll hear loneliness, fear, confusion, but also courage. They were trying to protect the tender parts of you, maybe in clumsy ways. Yes, but protection nonetheless. Forgiveness requires an internal shift from courtroom to living room. Less interrogation, more presence. There's another truth. The former you did not have access to the tools you have now. Neuroscience tells us that emotional regulation, boundary setting, and self-awareness require neural wiring. Wiring you only develop through experience. You cannot use muscles you haven't grown yet. So punishing your younger self for lacking strength makes as much sense as blaming a sapling for not yet shading the entire garden. Your former self walked through things your current self would not survive. Maybe they endured silence, dismissal, heartbreak. Maybe they carried secrets no one else could hold. They guarded the flame until you were old enough to build a lantern. When you say, "I hate who I used to be," you are hating the person who kept you alive long enough to dislike them. Let that sink in. Healing is a collaboration between versions, and forgiveness is the language they speak. Try something the next time you feel regret. Twist in your stomach. Pause. Place your hand on that spot. Whisper, "You were trying to be safe." Watch how the body responds. The body loves acknowledgement more than critique. Muscles unclench, not because the emotion vanished, but because the war around it ended. Forgiving your former self softens the present and brightens the future. When the past no longer demands punishment, the nervous system can channel energy into creation rather than defense. You feel less brittle, more spacious. Possibility re-enters the room. There's another surprising benefit when you forgive the former you. You become gentler with others. You see them as spirals too half-formed. Learning, stumbling through lessons you mastered only recently. Compassion expands outward. Judgment falls. You listen differently. Conversations deepen. Relationships shift. And something else opens. Identity evolves. If you cling to shame about who you were, you freeze the identity of who you can become. Shame is a time loop. Forgiveness breaks it. It tells the nervous system, "We are safe enough to become someone else now. Let's go." Deeper energy trapped in regret creates inertia. It locks you into familiar behaviors because the body fears repeating mistakes. When you forgive, energy flows again. You're more willing to try, to risk, to step into the unknown. The future becomes accessible. Forgiveness is not a one-time ceremony. It's a doorway you walk through again and again. You might return to the threshold months later, wiser, ready to soften another layer. That's normal. That's spiral evolution meeting compassion. And yes, sometimes the former self carries shame that doesn't belong to them, ancestral wounds, generational scripts. Forgiving them also means forgiving the lineage of fear passed down to you. When you gently release those patterns, you become the ancestor who ended the cycle. Someone generations from now will feel peace because you chose compassion today. Let me offer this image. Imagine you are holding hands with every version of yourself, older and younger, forming a chain across time. None of them want to be the weakest link. When you forgive, you strengthen the chain. When you shame, you weaken it. Your future self can only pull you forward if the chain holds. So tonight, before sleep, place your hand on your heart. Feel the pulse, its steadiness, its warmth. Whisper, "Thank you for trying. Thank you for protecting me. I release you." The body will hear you. The nervous system will shift, and the past will loosen. Forgiving the former self is not the end of healing. It's the beginning of freedom. Because the truth is simple and stunning: you were never meant to be perfect. You were meant to evolve. And evolution requires compassion for every version of the traveler. From this softness, a new self emerges, not built from guilt, but from grace, and grace is the soil where the next miracle grows. 3. Heart-brain coherence becoming a field. There's a quiet power that moves through your life when the heart and the brain finally stop arguing with each other. You've felt the opposite of it many times. Those days when the mind races with fear while the chest tightens in dread. When thoughts feel like sharp edges and your pulse becomes a drumbeat of survival. In that state, you move through the world defensively, bracing against the next wound, the next misunderstanding, the next disappointment. But coherence, the harmony between heart and brain, is the opposite of bracing. It's the soft opening of a door you didn't realize you were holding shut with your whole body. Coherence doesn't mean absence of emotion. It means alignment. The heart beats in a smooth, rhythmic wave, rather than a jagged, irregular pattern. The brain's electrical activity shifts, no longer firing scattered warnings, but forming steady, organized waves. In that harmony, something miraculous happens. You stop reacting, and you begin responding. Think of the difference this way. Reaction is lightning fast, blinding, instinctual. Response is like sunrise, measured, warm, steady. When coherence rises, the space between stimulus and choice expands. You catch yourself before saying the words that scar. You step back before assuming the worst. You inhale before taking action, letting clarity fill the lungs. The electromagnetic field generated by the heart is astonishing, many times stronger than the one produced by the brain. This isn't poetic metaphor. It's measurable science. Your heart broadcasts a frequency around you, bleeding into the space between bodies, brushing against the nervous systems of everyone you meet. When that field is chaotic, fragmented, anxious, others feel it. Conversations become brittle. Interactions turn sharp. Doors feel heavier to push open. The world mirrors the static you carry. But when coherence blooms, your field becomes smooth, like the surface of a calm lake. People can sense safety around you without knowing why. Their voices soften, their shoulders drop, they breathe deeper just by standing near you. Connection flows without force, like water finding its way downhill. Opportunities bend toward you, like metal filings aligning around a magnet, quiet, subtle, Inevitable. Imagine two tuning forks placed side by side. Strike one, and the other begins to vibrate automatically, not because it was touched, but because resonance travels invisibly. Your coherent heart is that striking fork. It entrains others. It invites nervous systems to relax. You become a lighthouse, not by shining aggressively, but by simply holding steady in turbulent weather. Much of life's suffering comes from misalignment, when the heart wants something the mind rejects, or when the mind clings to a narrative the heart has already outgrown. Incoherence feels like standing with one foot in the future and one foot nailed to the past. You wobble, you strain, nothing flows. The body knows this contradiction. The stomach knots, the chest squeezes, the jaw clenches, as if biting back truth. But when heart and brain agree, the body relaxes as if returning home. Breath deepens. Decisions feel clear, not because every outcome is certain, but because you trust your own direction. Coherence gives you internal gravity. You stop chasing, and instead, become someone things naturally gravitate toward. To find coherence, you must learn to breathe differently. Let the exhale become longer than the inhale. Let your shoulders slide down as if melting in warm sunlight. Focus your attention gently on the center of your chest, not forcing emotion, simply noticing sensation. Appreciation is the key, not gratitude forced by obligation, but genuine appreciation, an image of someone you love, a moment of kindness you received, the warmth of morning light. Appreciation smooths the electrical rhythm of the heart. The brain follows suit, and suddenly, coherence arrives like soft rain on thirsty soil. Relationships change instantly under coherence. The partner who used to trigger panic becomes easier to hear. The friend who seemed distant reveals vulnerability when met with presence. You no longer enter conversations armored, searching for threat. You enter with curiosity, seeking truth. That subtle shift rewrites the script of connection. Notice how we speak differently when the nervous system is calm. Words fall gently, not like stones. We listen without planning our next argument. Silence isn't uncomfortable, it's spacious. We see the person beyond the behavior. Coherence gives vision not of eyes, but of heart. Even the world outside shifts. Traffic feels less hostile. Long lines don't irritate. Time slows, not because circumstances changed, but because you did. Stress is not created by events. It's created by how the heart and brain interpret those events. Coherence changes the interpretation. One of the most powerful discoveries in neuroscience is that the heart sends more information to the brain than the brain sends to the heart. When the heart is frantic, it hijacks perception. The world looks sharper, darker, more dangerous. But when the heart finds a smooth rhythm, the brain receives signals of safety. Creativity awakens. Problem-solving becomes fluid. Fear loses its throne. There is a wordless intelligence in the chest. When you place your hand over your heart, you are not performing a ritual of sentimentality. You are activating the vagus nerve, telling your biology, we can rest now. And rest is not laziness. Rest is repair. Rest is recalibration. Rest is how coherence grows roots. Think about how often we apologize for being emotional. Yet emotion is energy in motion, a signal, a wave. We suppress it, and the heart's rhythm fractures. We ignore it, and the brain floods with stress chemistry. Coherence doesn't ask you to suppress anything. It asks you to feel with clarity, not chaos. It transforms emotion into information. There may be days when coherence seems impossible, when grief swells like a storm, when anger rattles the ribcage, when fear crawls up the spine. On those days, coherence is not a state, it's a practice. Breathe gently. Feel the weight of your hand on your heart. Notice the warmth, the life that never left you. Even for a moment, coherence can anchor you in the middle of a storm. The storm may continue outside, but inside, something steadies. Over time, coherence becomes a way of living. You speak slower, you listen deeper, you choose with more intention. You stop searching for signs outside and realize your heart is the sign. The electromagnetic field from that coherence becomes your silent language. People won't know why they trust you. They'll just know. Incoherence says, I must control. Coherence says, I can allow. Incoherence grabs. Coherence receives. Incoherence forces outcomes. Coherence aligns with timing. This alignment doesn't make life perfect, but it makes you unshakable. It gives you internal ballast. Waves may rock you, but they can't sink you. At its simplest, coherence can be practiced anywhere in line at the grocery store, before a difficult conversation, during a quiet morning with coffee. Feel the breath, expand the ribs, feel the heartbeat under your palm. Let appreciation bloom like a soft light behind the sternum. That's all. And yet, reality bends around this frequency. One day, someone will ask why it feels so easy to talk to you. They'll tell you conversations with you feel different, lighter, more honest. They won't know the science behind it. They'll only sense the field you emit. Coherence is invisible, but unmistakable. And eventually, life will begin to open like a hand unclenching. Doors will swing wider. People who match your resonance will appear without effort. Opportunities will arrive at the exact moment you're ready, not too soon, not too late. Because coherence doesn't change the world. It changes you, and the world reflects you back. In that reflection, you discover something profound. Peace is not a reward. It's a frequency. Stability is not luck. It's alignment. Connection is not coincidence. It's resonance. And once your heart and brain begin to move in rhythm, you stop fighting the river. You float. You listen. You trust. From that place, life becomes less about bracing and more about becoming. 4. You didn't miss the golden moment. There's a quiet fear that visits many of us as we grow older. The fear that life's best opportunities have already passed. We feel it when we scroll through other people's achievements, when birthdays arrive faster than expected, when dreams sit longer on the shelf than our pride wants to admit. It's the whisper, maybe I'm too late. That whisper tightens the chest, steals sleep, and paints the future in shrinking colors. But if you listen deeper beneath the static, you'll hear another voice, softer but wiser. There is no universal deadline you were supposed to meet. The universe doesn't keep a calendar taped to the refrigerator door with your destiny circled in red. It doesn't measure success by age or speed. It measures by readiness, by internal alignment, by the depth of consciousness you bring into what you touch. Time in the spiritual sense is not chronological. It's developmental. A flower that blooms in spring is not late just because winter was long. Think of life not as a race lane, but as a river. You can stand rigid on the bank, demanding the water speed up to match your impatience, or you can wade into its current, letting it carry you around bends you can't yet see. The river doesn't flow slower because you're unworthy. It flows at the speed of your unfolding. When you are still gathering strength, wisdom, clarity, when the nervous system is still learning safety, the current slows out of compassion, not punishment. You may look back at a decade where nothing seemed to move and believe you wasted it. But stillness is not stagnation. When the soul is rearranging its architecture, some growth happens above ground, visible to everyone, but some growth happens underground in roots, expanding, making soil richer, preparing the trunk to hold fruit without snapping. We rarely celebrate root work, but without it, every blossom would collapse under its own blooming. The illusion of a missed window comes from comparison. We compare our timeline to someone else's highlight reel, but your purpose has its own rhythm. Trees that stand in the same forest do not bloom the same week. Some take their time because their fruit must last through winter. Others bloom early because their scent must feed a passing season. You are not behind. You are simply becoming on schedule you don't yet understand. Consider how many times something that seemed ready to happen slipped through your fingers, a job you didn't get, a person who walked away, a move that fell apart. It's tempting to believe those were catastrophes, evidence that fate passed you by. But look at it with wiser eyes. If those things had arrived prematurely, would you have had the emotional vocabulary to sustain them? Would you have had boundaries to protect them? Would you have had the self-worth to receive them? Premature blessings become burdens. Imagine receiving the love of your life before you learned how to communicate through conflict. Imagine achieving your dream career before you healed the part of you that flinches at praise. Imagine stepping into leadership while your nervous system still shook from old wounds. It would have felt like pressure, not blessing. The universe is less concerned with delivering gifts and more concerned with preparing the hands that hold them. Spiritual time is not linear. It's layered. It waits for internal coherence. It waits for your frequency to match the frequency of what you're asking for. Manifestation isn't magic, it's resonance. If your desire vibrates at clarity, but your body vibrates at fear, the bridge between you collapses. When you do the inner work, release resentment, soften judgment, breathe deeper, trust more, your frequency rises. Suddenly, the bridge holds. This is why rushing doesn't work. The anxious mind wants to sprint, but a body still carrying trauma moves slowly because slow is safe. And the universe listens to the body more than the mind. When you feel delayed, it's often because something inside you is still integrating. Old beliefs are dissolving. The nervous system is updating its software. Your intuition is calibrating like a compass finding north. That invisible work creates visible breakthroughs later. The oak doesn't beat itself up for taking decades to grow. Sand doesn't apologize for becoming glass slowly. Under pressure, transformed by time and flame. Why should you? If you study the stories of people who arrived late, artists who didn't find their voice until their 60s, teachers who bloomed after heartbreak, leaders forged in years of silence, you'll notice a pattern. They were not late. They were seasoned. The extra years gave their gifts weight, texture, meaning. Youth can create beauty, but maturity creates depth. And depth is what nourishes others. Think about how often impatience pushed you into situations you weren't ready for. Think about how many times you wished for something before you could appreciate it. Think about how often life pulled something away not to punish you, but to prepare you. Delay is not absence. Delay is incubation. Sometimes the universe hides the blessing behind a closed door, not because it's rejecting you, but because it's still painting the final strokes. You will never see a bird break from its eggshell and accuse itself of being late. It emerges when its wings are strong enough to face wind. The egg does not open because the calendar demands it. It opens because the life inside pushed against its walls long enough to grow the muscle of freedom. Your growth is doing the same. And when you think you've waited too long, remember, time spent becoming wiser is not wasted. Time spent becoming stable is not wasted. Time spent healing foundations is not wasted. Imagine, for a moment, that life had rushed everything you ever wanted into your hands 5 years early. Would you still be holding it today? Probably not. You weren't yet the person who could protect it. You're becoming that person now. And here's the paradox. The moment you stop racing time is the moment things arrive faster, because chasing pulls life away, but readiness pulls life toward you. You are not behind. You are not too late. You are not aging out of your purpose. You are ripening. The universe does not speak the language of urgency. It speaks the language of alignment. When you shift from panic to presence, doors open not because you earned them, but because you finally resonate with them. So, the next time you catch yourself whispering, "I missed my chance," soften your breath. Feel your hand, warm your chest, and remind yourself, the golden moment is not a date on the calendar. It is a frequency in the body, and you are tuning to it right now. When your consciousness deepens, time dissolves. And when time dissolves, possibility floods back. You are on time. In fact, you have been right on time every day of your life. And one morning, you will look around and realize that everything you once begged to happen has quietly arrived, not late, but perfectly synchronized with who you've become. 5. The connectivity of choices. There's a subtle architecture woven through your life, so subtle that most people never notice it until decades have passed. It's built not only from the choices you boldly make, but also from the ones you avoid, postpone, and quietly decline. We tend to believe that action alone creates destiny. Yet silence, delay, hesitation, and refusal all leave fingerprints on the timeline. To choose is to draw a line forward, but to not choose is to draw a line inward. Both lines shape who you become. Think of each decision as a thread, luminous and alive. When you say yes to something that honors your values, that thread brightens, pulling future opportunities toward it like fireflies gathering around a flame. When you say no to something misaligned, another thread is strengthened, the thread of self-respect. Even no is generative. It is not empty space. It is clarity in motion. People often underestimate the choices they didn't make. They think ignoring something is neutral. It rarely is. Not choosing is a broadcast too. When you decline chaos, you are announcing to the universe, I protect my peace. When you walk away from distraction, you whisper, my energy is precious. When you stop chasing validation, you open space for authenticity to breathe. These signals rearrange the electromagnetic field around you. Some choices collapse timelines, others amplify them. Some are scaffolding removed. All of them speak in a frequency that the quantum field hears far louder than your words. Imagine your life as a vast constellation. Each choice is a star. At first, they seem random, specks of light scattered across darkness. But over time, coherence emerges, and those points begin to connect, forming the shape of your purpose. Others may look at the same dots and see nothing, but you feel the pattern pulling tight. One day, you trace your finger through memory and finally understand, that's why I felt compelled to turn left instead of right. Choice is direction, not because of logic alone, but because of frequency. Every time you choose something aligned, you vibrate clearer. Every time you betray your inner voice, your field fractures. Clarity is not a gift. It's the accumulation of consistent resonance. Let's talk about consistency for a moment. Consistency isn't the rigid discipline of grinding through pain. It's the gentle honesty of showing up the same way your soul wants to be seen. It's remembering your truth more often than you forget it. When your choices match your identity, the nervous system rests. You exhale easier. People around you can predict your emotional weather. The world itself stabilizes. But when your choices contradict your truth, tension forms. The body senses misalignment like a stone in the shoe. You feel it, even if you pretend you don't. A life built on mismatched choices becomes heavy, not because of weight, but because of fragmentation. Fragmentation happens when the heart says yes, and the mouth says no. When intuition says stay, and fear says run. When your boundaries whisper stop, but your conditioning murmurs continue. This fragmentation scatters your energy across too many timelines. Your future becomes foggy, not because destiny is unclear, but because you are broadcasting 10 different signals at once. Alignment is not found in big, dramatic decisions. It's sculpted from the small ones. The choice to stay silent during gossip. The choice to sleep when the world says hustle. The choice to breathe before reacting. The choice to wait for the right. Yes, Instead of rushing into the wrong one, these micro-decisions calibrate your field like tuning a violin. One string slightly off alters the entire symphony. The universe listens, not to your intention alone, but to your pattern. A single choice is a spark. A pattern of choices is a signal. When your pattern becomes coherent, the field responds. It opens doors you never knew existed, introduces you to people who reflect your growth, and dissolves timelines that no longer serve your expansion. Life appears to become easier, not because the outer world changed, but because the inner circuitry finally stopped short-circuiting. Consider the choices you regret, not because regret itself is useful, but because it reveals something profound you learned. If regret were a sign of failure, it would burn you. Instead, it teaches you to make better micro-adjustments next time. Regret is not a punishment, it's a recalibration. What matters is what you choose afterward. Now, consider the choices you're proud of. The ordinary ones, the times you walked away quietly, or stayed present through someone's pain, or stood firm in your worth even when shaking. Those decisions stitched resilience into your nervous system. They made you heavier in the best way, weighty with inner gravity. People can feel that gravity when you walk into a room. There's another layer here. Choices do not exist in isolation. They chain together. A boundary today creates confidence tomorrow, which inspires clarity next month, which attracts opportunity next year. You may not see the chain now, but you will. Choice weaves destiny like a loom, one thread at a time. And what about the moments you froze and took no action? Those moments, too, are instructive. Freeze is the nervous system searching for safety. It means something inside you wasn't ready. Don't shame that. Instead, ask gently, what was I protecting? When you answer honestly, the freeze melts into understanding, and understanding becomes self-trust. Self-trust is the currency of choice. The more you trust your inner voice, the less noise influences you. Marketing, opinions, expectations, they become background static. Your frequency becomes your compass. You choose not from fear of missing out, but from a knowing of what will nourish you. As this pattern deepens, something beautiful happens. The scattered pieces of your identity, old dreams, forgotten talents, unspoken desires begin to cluster around a central theme. You start recognizing yourself in your own reflection. The gap between who you are and who you want to be shrinks. Alignment doesn't feel like fireworks. Alignment feels like relief. And then, the field answers. You'll notice conversations ending naturally when they no longer match your resonance. You'll feel sudden intuition to text someone, and that message becomes a doorway. You'll experience strange coincidences that string together like breadcrumbs leading you forward. This is not magic. This is coherence expressing itself in the material world. When your choices match your truth, the world mirrors your integrity. Not immediately, not loudly, but steadily. Gates open without knocking. People show up without begging. Opportunities refresh themselves like pages a breeze turns for you. Conversely, when you abandon your truth, the world mirrors that. 2. Deuxième. Conversation drain. Effort multiplies. These aren't punishments. They're feedback mechanisms. Your life is not happening to you. It's happening from you. Each choice whispers your values into the fabric of reality. Consistency shouts them. So ask yourself, what am I choosing, even when I choose nothing? What am I protecting when I walk away? What do my patterns reveal more loudly than my words? Because energy doesn't lie. And when the scattered pieces begin to align, when the heart, mind, nervous system, and behavior all point in the same direction, the field shifts. The maze becomes a path. The resistance becomes wind at your back. The future stops hiding. Coherence isn't built from intensity. It's built from repetition. Every consistent choice is a stitch closing the gap between who you were and who you are becoming. And one morning, you'll look around and realize your life doesn't feel random anymore. It feels woven, because you finally stopped scattering thread across 1,000 timelines and began tying knots in the one that matters. And that, quietly, is how destiny forms. 6. Comparison pulls you off your path. There's a quiet ache that rises when you measure your life against someone else's crest. It's not loud at first, just a faint tug in the heart, a tightening of the breath, a soft whisper that says, "Look at them. Look how far they've gone. Why aren't you there yet?" And if you're not careful, that whisper becomes a chorus, drowning out the sound of your own footsteps. Comparison is subtle like that. It steals your attention one glance, one scroll, one thought at a time. Most of us don't begin life comparing. Children don't worry if another child runs faster or draws better. They move from instinct. They follow the natural pull of curiosity. They operate from presence, not measurement. Comparison is learned absorbed from anxious parents, competitive schools, advertisements that poke at our insecurities. Slowly, without noticing, we internalize a rule: worth must be proven by matching someone else's pace. But here's a truth that only reveals itself after years of breath and bruising. Comparison disconnects you from your own rhythm. It's like picking up someone else's instrument and wondering why your fingers don't know the notes. You were built with a unique tempo. When you rush to match a tempo that doesn't belong to you, your nervous system panics. It contracts. Breath shortens. The heart pounds not from excitement, but from misalignment. Think of a radio dial. Every life has a frequency. When you tune into someone else's frequency, your signal fuzzes. Static grows. Guidance becomes harder to hear. Your intuition, the quiet compass beneath thought, goes silent. Because intuition speaks softly, and comparison shouts. When you look at someone's chapter 20 and compare it to your chapter 7, you're ignoring the pages you haven't written yet. You're overlooking the plot twists, the character development, the slow-building wisdom that will eventually become your strength. Every story needs pacing. A tale that throws revelations too early loses meaning. Your life is no different. Some flowers bloom at dawn. Others wait for dusk. The petals that open later are not defective. They are designed for a different light. Consider how absurd it would be for an apple tree to envy the height of a cedar, or for a river to envy the ocean's depth. Each fulfills a different ecological purpose. Humans do the same, but because we forget this, we suffer. We forget we are ecosystems, not products. Comparison isn't just emotional, it's physiological. When you scroll through someone's curated success, the brain releases chemicals that signal threat. The body tightens. The mind races to defend identity. Your nervous system doesn't know the difference between emotional danger and physical danger. It contracts either way. That contraction pulls you out of presence. Your breath moves into your shoulders instead of your belly. Thoughts become survival-focused. And in survival mode, creativity dies. You can't build a life you love when your body believes it's unsafe, being exactly who you are. When you compare, you abandon your body. Your energy leaves the present moment and chases narratives outside of you. But when you stop comparing, truly stop, energy returns home. Breath deepens. Shoulders soften. Space appears behind your eyes. You can finally listen to the subtle pulls of your soul instead of the loud demands of culture. There's a deeper layer here you never really compare fairly. When you look at someone succeeding, you compare your wounds with their highlight reel, their chapter 20 with your chapter 7, their edited moment with your unfiltered experience. No one posts the nights they couldn't breathe from self-doubt, the mornings they couldn't rise, the meals burned, the relationships fractured, the choices they regret. You only see the fruit, not the root. Roots are grown in darkness beneath soil, invisible, and darkness takes time. Do you know why comparison feels so painful? because it tempts you to abandon your unique curriculum. Your soul came here to learn specific lessons to dissolve certain fears, explore particular talents, heal generational patterns. Someone else's achievements are irrelevant to that curriculum. When you chase their path, you exit your syllabus. And life, not wanting you to waste incarnational energy, redirects you with discomfort. That discomfort is not punishment, it's course correction. Think of a bird who tries to swim because it sees fish moving faster. It will drown, not because it's flawed, but because it abandoned its nature. You are wired for flight in your own way. Your wings look different. Your altitude feels different. Trust that. Comparison also destroys intimacy. When you fixate on someone's success, you stop seeing their humanity. You disconnect from empathy, curiosity, and learning. But when you release comparison, admiration becomes possible. Inspiration re-enters the conversation. You can learn from others without losing yourself. The most dangerous thing comparison steals is focus. Focus is currency. Focus is prayer. Where attention goes, reality follows. When you spend focus on someone else's lane, you starve your own. You water another garden while wondering why yours won't grow. And comparison rarely points upward. Often it points sideways toward people near you in age, geography, career. That proximity makes it feel like a race. But life is not a track. It's an orchard. Each tree ripens differently. Let's go deeper. Comparison is often a symptom. Beneath it lies a belief I am not enough as I am. When you heal that belief, not through affirmation, but through embodiment, comparison dissolves. It loses its function. The nervous system calms. Your gaze returns inward. You begin to trust timing, cycles, pace. Notice what happens when you rest into your own rhythm. Ideas surface. Joy returns. Your body becomes a receiving station again. Sleep improves. Patience grows. You begin to notice small wins that comparison blinded you to. Those wins, consistent, gentle, accumulative, are what make destiny visible. Comparison is like turning your head while walking. You lose balance. But when you face forward, the path beneath your feet becomes clear. Each step becomes intentional. Try this. Imagine all the versions of you who tried and failed, who cried quietly, who lost things precious. See them standing behind you in a long lineage. They are pushing you forward with hope. They are not asking you to look left or right. They are begging you to continue the line. When you compare, you break the lineage. When you focus inward, you honor it. Something else happens when comparison falls away. Joy becomes real, not performative, not conditional. Joy returns to simple things: sunlight through curtains, warm tea, quiet mornings, a conversation that lands softly. These joys were always there, but comparison made them invisible. And here's the paradox: when you stop chasing timelines, achievement accelerates. Because when energy returns to the body, creativity rises. When creativity rises, aligned opportunities appear. When opportunities appear, momentum grows. Not frantic momentum, but steady, grounded, nourishing momentum. You cannot receive what's meant for you while your eyes are fixed on someone else's blessings. Walk your path like it's sacred, because it is. Every detour taught resilience. Every delay taught trust. Every heartbreak strengthened compassion. None of it was wasted. To stop comparing, you must accept something difficult, but liberating. There is no universal arrival point. No singular summit. Each soul climbs a different mountain. Some climb in youth. Some climb after 50. Some climb quietly, with no applause. Some climb inward, unseen. The mountain that belongs to you has trails carved only by your feet. And every time you compare, you pause on the trail. You lose altitude. You give oxygen to doubt. Place a hand over your heart. Breathe into your ribs. Whisper gently, I am on time. Feel the warmth return. Comparison is the thief of presence. Presence is the portal to alignment. Alignment is the frequency of miracles. When you walk at your own pace, you stop rushing and start becoming. So keep your eyes on your own summit. Celebrate others without abandoning your ascent. And one day, when you reach a clearing and look back at the winding path behind you, you'll realize something stunning. Every step was necessary. Every pause was integration. Every detour was training. And the moment you stopped comparing, you finally heard the mountain calling you home. 7. Releasing the ego attached to should have. There's a particular heaviness that settles into the body when the mind whispers, I should have. The phrase is small, but its gravity is enormous. It clings to the ribs, tightens the jaw, sits behind the eyes, like unshed tears. I should have known better. I should have left sooner. I should have tried harder. I should have chosen differently. The ego loves this sentence not because it brings truth, but because it brings control. If you can blame yourself for what happened, then maybe you can pretend you were in charge. But you weren't. Not back then. Not with the nervous system you had. Not with the awareness you carried. Not with the wounds you hadn't yet named. Every should have is a rope tied around your waist, tethering you to a version of reality that no longer exists. You try to walk forward, but the rope tugs you back into old scenes. You replay the moment, rehearse alternative outcomes. Imagine yourself smarter, stronger, more fearless. Yet the truth is breathtaking in its simplicity. You could not have been any other version of yourself at that moment. If the capacity had existed, the choice would have been different. Capacity is not moral, it is developmental. The ego clings to regret because regret implies control. And ego craves control the way lungs crave oxygen. But regret is built on an illusion. The illusion that you had the consciousness then, that you have now. You didn't. And you earned this new consciousness through the very choices you now grieve. Place your hand gently over your heart for a moment. Feel that pulse steady, warm, rhythmic. That pulse belongs to someone who survived, not someone who failed, not someone who ruined their destiny, someone who lived through what they were not prepared for and grew the muscle to carry the lesson later. Hindsight is not wisdom. It is privilege. When you say, I should have, what you mean is, I know better now, and that is something to honor, not punish. Think of your life as a field of seeds. Each experience plants one. Some sprout quickly, lessons learned fast. Others lie dormant for years, waiting for rain, waiting for warmth, waiting for the soil of the nervous system to mature. When the lesson finally grows, you look back at the barren field and say, I should have had fruit long ago. But fruit arrives only when the roots are ready. What if nothing was late? What if the unfolding is perfect? What if the timing is merciful? The ego tells you that regret makes you responsible. But responsibility and self-flagellation are not the same thing. One creates maturity. The other creates shame. Shame freezes the timeline. It locks you into the emotional age you carried during the wound. To evolve, you must thaw. Here is a truth whispered quietly by every elder who has ever healed. Self-forgiveness does not erase the past, it releases the future. Let's look deeper into the body. Neuroscience tells us that emotion is chemical. Regret triggers stress hormones, adrenaline, cortisol, which clamp down on curiosity and creativity. When the brain floods with these chemicals, it becomes future blind. You can't plan. You can't dream. You can't see possibility. Regret doesn't just haunt the past. It impoverishes the future. Now consider energy. Every moment you spend reliving what should have happened is a moment you drain from what could still happen. Regret is a leak. When you plug the leak, energy returns to the present body. Presence is power, and power creates forward movement. The ego is terrified of releasing regret because regret gives it identity. I am the one who messed up. I am the one who failed. If you let go, who are you? You become someone new. And ego fears newness, because newness is unpredictable. But the heart does not fear newness. The heart is designed for renewal. Let's imagine an old chapter of your life like a room you haven't visited in years. The furniture is dusty, the curtains stale. Pages of old journals sit scattered across the floor. Unfinished sentences. Insolitaires. Every time you whisper, "I should have," you walk back into that room and sit in the dark. The body tenses because the room is haunted not by ghosts, but by versions of yourself trapped in loops of unprocessed meaning. Now imagine closing the door. Imagine locking it gently, placing a hand on the wood, and saying, "Thank you. I've learned what I came to learn here." The door doesn't vanish, but its power over you dissolves. When you release the narrative of should, something profound happens. Choice becomes pure again. You stop choosing from fear of missing out. You stop choosing to compensate. You stop choosing to patch holes that no longer exist. Instead, you choose from wholeness, not as a reaction to pain, but as an expression of authenticity. Wholeness changes the texture of decision-making. When you choose from emptiness, you hoard. When you choose from insecurity, you chase. When you choose from comparison, you distort. But when you choose from wholeness, you invite, you attract, you allow. There is a gentleness beneath this lesson. It says, you were doing your best. You are still doing your best. Tomorrow, your best will be better. Forgiveness softens the nervous system. It slows the heart. It melts tension. It invites safety into places long guarded. Safety is what allows the brain to create new pathways. New pathways become new behaviors. New behaviors become new outcomes. Forgiveness is not spiritual. It's neurological. It's important to clarify something. Releasing regret does not deny accountability. You can look at your past choices with open eyes, acknowledge the harm, repair where possible, and still refuse to torture yourself. Accountability gives the lesson weight. Shame gives it chains. And chains keep you from walking forward. Consider this. Every person you admire has chapters they'd rewrite. Every teacher carries scars. Every wise elder once made a choice that shattered something precious. Wisdom grows from fragments. Integrity grows from repairs. When someone says, "I wouldn't change a thing," what they really mean is, "I wouldn't trade the strength I've become for the mistake I once made." Let's go even deeper. Regret often hides something more vulnerable: grief. Grief for the person we could have been sooner. Grief for the innocence we lost. Grief for the time wasted. When you allow grief, not as punishment, but as passage, it flows like a river. It leaves clarity in its wake. After grief comes grace, and with grace comes a startling realization. The person you are today, the resilience in your spine, the compassion in your voice, the boundaries in your bones exists because of the choices you regret. The scars are not evidence of failure. They are evidence of transformation. One day, you will look back and see that nothing was wasted. Every tangent taught you true value. Every heartbreak taught you true love. Every delay taught you divine timing. Regret becomes reverence. Now let's breathe it into the body. Inhale deeply. Feel the ribs expand. The diaphragm drop. The heart swell. Exhale slowly. Let the shoulders release. Whisper gently, "I let go of what I thought should have been." Feel the subtle tremor in the chest, the loosening of invisible ropes. In that space, presence returns. And presence is where reality unfolds. From presence, choices become cleaner, lighter. They stop compensating for a wound and start reflecting a truth. You will know you've released a should when decisions feel less like escape and more like alignment. When silence feels peaceful, not punishing. When you can remember without shrinking. And eventually, regret becomes gratitude. Not because the past was perfect, but because it forged the version of you capable of living fully now. Let this land gently. You are allowed to outgrow the person you blame. You are allowed to hold compassion for someone who didn't know better. You are allowed to move forward without dragging old stories behind you. You are allowed to choose again from wholeness, not hunger. When you free yourself from the myth of should have, life stops feeling like a chase and starts feeling like a conversation. A conversation between who you've been and who you are becoming. And in that conversation, the heart finally answers, I am enough, as I am, and I will be enough tomorrow. 8. The roads you didn't take. It's strange, isn't it? There are moments in life where you stand at a crossroads, and one path gleams with promise. It sparkles with potential, looks beautiful from the outside, and everyone around you seems to say, that's the one, go. Maybe it was a relationship that looked perfect on paper, a job that seemed prestigious, a move that felt glamorous, a friendship that shimmered with charm, and maybe, at the last moment, something inside you quiet, unexplainable, hesitated. You couldn't articulate why. Your friends didn't understand. Even you questioned yourself. But you stepped back. You said no. Or you simply froze. Then life moved on. Years later, you learned the truth. That relationship broke someone else's spirit. That job crushed someone's health. That city swallowed someone's identity whole. The path you didn't take wasn't actually golden. It was glitter stretched over glass. And the glass would have cut you. What protected you wasn't logic. It wasn't foresight. It was the intelligence of your nervous system. A deep subconscious instinct that senses danger long before the mind can name it. We call it intuition, gut feeling, inner knowing. But in truth, it's survival. Wisdom passed down from ancestors who survived storms by feeling the wind shift before the sky darkened. Those almost decisions you didn't make are not evidence of fear. They are evidence of protection. There is a mythology we carry that every missed opportunity is a mistake. But the older you get, the clearer it becomes. Not every open door is meant to be walked through. Some doors are tests. Some are temptations wearing perfume. Some are invitations from your older patterns, the ones you've outgrown but haven't fully closed. And some are traps, beautiful cages disguised as possibility. Imagine a hallway with 100 doors. Behind some are treasures, growth, alignment, expansion. Behind others are emotional debts, trauma, loss. But you cannot see through the wood. All you have is sensation, a tightening in the belly, a flutter in the ribs, a whisper that says, not this one. That whisper is sacred. We are taught to ignore that voice, to override it with logic, to call it fear. But sometimes fear is not cowardice. Sometimes fear is intuition saying, this would break you. Every no that confused you at the time becomes a quiet blessing in hindsight. Think back. How many times did you grieve a closed door, only to later realize that door opened into a room full of knives? That job you wanted so desperately was the one that burned out your friend. That relationship you romanticized would have eroded your worth. That opportunity you chased would have demanded you abandon your health, your boundaries, your joy. We romanticize the roads not taken, but only because we can only imagine their highlight reel. We do not imagine the arguments behind closed doors, the anxiety hidden under makeup, the loneliness behind luxury, the emptiness beneath applause. Sometimes the universe protects you by making something feel wrong. Sometimes it protects you by making something fall apart. Sometimes it protects you by making someone else choose you out. Rejection is often redirection. Closed doors are often corridors. When you're young, you believe missing out is the greatest tragedy. But as you age, you begin to see chaos avoided as a form of abundance too. We celebrate what we gained, but we rarely celebrate what we avoided. The heartbreak that never arrived, the betrayal that never scarred, the collapse that never came. But these are victories too quiet ones. There's another truth. Not all roads can be walked simultaneously. To take one path is to leave countless others unexplored. This is not tragedy. It's design. Life requires focus. Attention is finite. To commit to one timeline means trusting that the timeline you're walking is sufficient and letting go of the fantasy of the other paths. Fantasy is seductive. It's easy to imagine the road not taken as perfect, but perfect roads do not exist. Every path demands sacrifice. Every chapter costs something. We must also remember this. The road you didn't take carved the shape of the road you did. If you had chosen differently at 20, you wouldn't be the person reading this now. You would have a different voice, a different nervous system, a different heart. All that you've become your calm, your boundaries. Your wisdom was shaped by the path you did walk. Even mistakes shape magnificence. Sometimes, you find yourself mourning an opportunity you never experienced. You feel ache for a storyline you never lived. But that ache is not regret. It's grief. Grief for what was possible. And grief is allowed. But grief does not mean the path was wrong. Imagine a tree in a forest. Its branches spread many directions. Some limbs never grow because others must. The tree does not mourn every branch it could have grown. It simply grows where light reaches. Humans are the same. The closed door isn't a punishment. It's guidance, a gentle nudge from a higher vantage point saying, "Trust me, you don't want what's behind that." And sometimes, the road not taken wasn't a disaster at all. It simply didn't belong to you. Maybe it belonged to a version of you that you've since outgrown. Maybe it belonged to a younger self who wanted from emptiness, not from wholeness. As you evolve, the roads that once sparkled lose their shine. Not because the road changed, but because you did. Évolution réarrange désir. There is a deeper metaphysical layer here. In the quantum field, every choice collapses infinite potentials into a single reality. By choosing your current path, you allowed other versions of yourself to dissolve. This isn't loss. It's coherence. Too many paths dilute energy. One chosen path focuses it, and focus is how destinies are built. Think of an archer. To shoot an arrow with power, you must let go of all other targets. Your hand cannot point at everything. It must point at one thing. Your life works the same way. The road not taken teaches focus. It also teaches trust. Because trust is not believing everything will go how you want. Trust is believing that whatever unfolds is ultimately usable, even the detours, even the delays, even the disappointments. Your unconscious intelligence is older than your rational mind. It whispers warnings long before danger arrives, and invitations, long before opportunity blooms. When you look back at the roads you didn't choose, you might see that the same subtle signal saved you again and again. A feeling in the gut, a sense of heaviness, a strange resistance that logic couldn't explain. That feeling is the language of the heart untranslated. We live in a culture that glorifies thinking, but forgets feeling. But feeling is deeper data. Feeling is pattern recognition. Feeling is ancestral memory. There's elegance in trusting it. Of course, you will sometimes wonder, what might have happened had you chosen differently? But wonder is not failure. Wonder is the echo of possibility. And possibility doesn't demand you chase it. It just invites you to live fully in the timeline you've chosen. Eventually, maybe in 10 months, maybe in 10 years, you will look back at the roads you didn't take and feel gratitude not just for the blessings you gained, but for the storms you avoided. And the gratitude will feel different. It will be quiet, mature, grounded. You will realize something profound. Life wasn't happening against you. It was happening for you. Even when the blessing looked like loss, even when protection looked like rejection, even when guidance looked like delay, place your hand over your heart. Whisper, The doors that closed were just as sacred as the ones that opened. And feel the truth of that sentence soften the edges of your story. One day, you'll thank the roads you didn't take, because without them, you would never have arrived here, in this exact version of yourself, with this exact wisdom, breathing this exact breath. And that, quietly, is victory. 9. Observing the past through gratitude. There's a moment in every awakening journey when you finally realize something quietly radical. You cannot edit the past. You cannot reach into the chapters already written and rearrange the dialogue, fix the choices, soften the consequences. No matter how many times your mind replays the memory, the architecture of the event remains. But what can change what shifts like weather across the inner landscape is the meaning you attach to those memories, the frequency you assign to those scenes, the emotional signature you carry forward. The past is not made of stone. It is made of interpretation. For years, you might have looked back and felt shame. The chest tightens. The stomach twists. Breath becomes shallow. The body remembers, not as story, but as chemical, regret, anger, helplessness. All of them flood the nervous system as if the event were happening now. Because for the subconscious, time is not linear. The body is still trying to metabolize what the mind refuses to accept. But when you revisit your past through gratitude, even gentle, hesitant gratitude, something astonishing happens. The emotional chemistry shifts. The brain's firing pattern rewires. The heart's magnetic field softens. You are no longer collapsing into the younger self. You are holding them, witnessing them, elevating them. Gratitude changes the angle of perception. It turns the wound so light can hit it. You don't have to be grateful for the pain. You just have to be grateful for what the pain forged. Every heartbreak carved out space for deeper compassion. Every betrayal taught you the weight of your own voice. Every failure planted seeds of humility and resilience. Gratitude doesn't deny the sharpness of the blade. It acknowledges the strength built by surviving it. Quantum physics gives us a metaphor here. The wave function. Before observation, particles exist in a cloud of possibility. When observed, they collapse into an outcome. Your past memories work the same way. Each time you revisit them with resentment, you collapse them into suffering again. But when you observe through gratitude, the wave function of the memory collapses into a different emotional configuration, lighter, clearer, more coherent. You are not changing the event. You are changing the timeline it projects into your present. Think of your past selves as actors performing a role. They didn't have access to the script you now hold. They improvised in darkness, navigating instinctively, often blindfolded. It is easy to judge them now, from the balcony of hindsight, but judgment keeps them frozen. Gratitude, however, lets them bow, exit the stage, and finally rest. When you revisit the past with gratitude, you are no longer the wounded character. You are the director, observing the scene with context. Directors don't scream at actors for acting. They study, adjust, and refine. They understand the performance belongs to that version of the script. Place a hand on your heart now. Feel the warmth. Imagine sending that warmth backward, into the chest of your younger self. Whisper something simple. Thank you for surviving. Your nervous system will register that as truth, because survival is not small. It is monumental. Let's go deeper. The nervous system stores incomplete experiences. These are moments when you didn't have the resources, emotional or cognitive, to process what was happening. Your body froze. Your mind fractured. That freeze becomes stuck energy. But gratitude is heat. Gratitude thaws what fear froze. When you revisit the memory not to punish but to understand, the body finally completes the emotional cycle. It exhales the breath it held for years. It's also important to see that gratitude doesn't mean pretending something was good. It means acknowledging that something was useful. Pain carried information. Loss taught boundaries. Humiliation taught discernment. Even the worst chapters sculpted intuition. Imagine the past as a river. If you stand facing upstream, you push against the current. Exhausted, angry, bracing, gratitude turns you around. Now you float downstream. The river carries you toward wider waters. The struggle dissolves not because the current changed, but because your orientation did. When you look back with bitterness, you bind yourself to the identity of victimhood. When you look back with gratitude, you bind yourself to growth. Identity is elastic. The more flexible it becomes, the more freedom you feel in your chest. Now, think about how often memories trigger emotional loops. A song plays. A song drifts by. A street corner appears. Suddenly, you are 12 years old again. 7 years old again. 23. Again. Your body collapses into an emotional posture. Shoulders tighten. Jaw locks. Breathing shrinks. This collapse is not the memory. It's the meaning tied to the memory. But what if you could untie the knot when you observe past events and say, "Thank you for teaching me." You snip the thread linking you to pain. That event no longer dictates your reaction in the present. You reclaim agency. You unhook from the emotional gravity of then. What we call trauma is not the memory, it's the charge attached to it. Gratitude neutralizes the charge. Imagine a traumatic memory, like a heavy suitcase you've carried for decades. The weight shaped your spine. It altered your gait. It became your posture in conversations, in intimacy, in ambition. Then one day, you realize you can open the suitcase, and inside, instead of punishment, you discover tools, clarity, resilience, empathy. You put those tools in your pocket, and then the suitcase becomes empty. You can finally set it down. This is the alchemy of gratitude. Some people fear gratitude, believing it excuses harm, but gratitude does not erase accountability. It simply takes back your power. You can say, "That should not have happened," but it shaped capability. Boundaries forged from fire are stronger than boundaries forged from theory. Now consider the quantum metaphor again. When you observe the past with regret, you collapse into a low-frequency timeline, one full of stagnation, self-doubt, scarcity. When you observe the past with gratitude, you collapse into a higher frequency timeline, one full of possibility, sovereignty, expansion. Same event, different collapse. People often ask, how do I let go of the past? The answer is not forgetting. It's reinterpreting. It's integrating. The past doesn't dissolve when ignored. It dissolves when honored. Think of your heart as a lens. When coated with resentment, the world looks harsh. When polished by gratitude, the world glows. This isn't delusion. It's perception. Perception shapes behavior. Behavior shapes reality. If you want a future that feels soft, you must soften the past. Here's another insight. Gratitude for the past teaches humility for the present. It reminds you that each moment is a seed. Today's confusion is tomorrow's breakthrough. Today's heartbreak is tomorrow's boundary. Today's disappointment is tomorrow's alignment. Gratitude trains the nervous system to trust the unseen. Trust is the currency of faith. Without trust, we grip. With trust, we receive. Think of someone who hurt you. Your instinct may be to revisit the wound, but consider the strength you grew from leaving. Consider the standards you built. Consider the self-respect that emerged. The pain was the sculptor, but the sculpture is you. When you reach that perspective, something in the chest opens like a window. Fresh air enters. That's the nervous system exiting survival mode. A gentle practice when a painful memory arises. Place your hand on your heart and whisper, "Thank you for teaching me." Do not force emotion. Simply feel the exhale. Over time, the body will learn safety not as idea, but as sensation. Eventually, the past becomes a library, not a prison. You pick books, read chapters, gather insight, and leave without chains. When you look back with gratitude, you also discover compassion not just for yourself, but for everyone involved. You see their limitation, their fear, their ignorance. Compassion replicates growth. Anger replicates wounds. Rotation after rotation. Gratitude turns the spiral upward. One day, you'll revisit an old memory and feel nothing. Not numbness, not avoidance, just neutrality. That neutrality is not emptiness. It is liberation. From that place, the present moment becomes thicker, richer, more vivid, and the future stops feeling like a threat. Because when the past stops chasing you, the future stops running away. Gratitude does not change history. It changes frequency. And when frequency changes, the wave function of reality collapses into something new, lighter, clearer, kinder. You deserve that version of reality. And the doorway to it has always been, thank you for growing me. 10. Synchronicities as navigation signals. There comes a point on the inner journey when you begin to notice life whispering back to you. At first, it's subtle, almost ignorable. A number repeating on a clock, a phrase overheard twice in the same day, a name resurfacing after years of silence, a stranger saying exactly what you needed to hear. Logical mind shrugs and says, coincidence. But your chest knows better. Something hums beneath the surface, like a radio signal, just barely tuned in. These moments, synchronicities, aren't random accidents drifting through your day. They are echoes from the informational field you are resonating with. They are directional signs in a language older than reason. Modern science calls it pattern recognition. Spiritual teachers call it guidance. The heart calls it memory. Synchronicity happens when your internal state aligns with a deeper stream of meaning. The outside world responds not as a mirror of thought alone, but as a mirror of vibration. It's the universe's way of saying, stay here, keep going, you're tuning in. When you're moving through life with presence, breath steady, nervous system unarmored, attention uncluttered, these signals become louder. They cluster, they multiply. You start seeing threads connecting people, places, events. It feels like a choreography you didn't consciously learn, but your soul recognizes the steps. Most people miss these nudges because their attention is drowned in noise, fear, urgency, comparison, self-judgment. Noise drowns frequency. Presence amplifies it. Imagine carrying a radio through a city. Static hissing. Dial turned between stations. You hear fragment voice. Melodies. Static crackle. Now imagine turning the knob slowly until the music becomes clear. That clarity is what synchronicity feels like. It's not magic. It's tuning. The informational field, what some call the quantum field, carries possibility. When your inner frequency matches a possibility, reality ripples. Events arrange themselves, like iron filings, lining up around a magnetic pulse, and you find yourself marveling. What are the odds? Yet odds are irrelevant. Resonance is the architect. Consider repeating numbers. 1, 1, 1, 222, 444. They're not lottery tickets. They're timestamps from the field, saying, your thoughts right now matter. Pay attention, not to scare you, to focus you. The moment you notice, your awareness sharpens. Awareness is the currency of transformation. Sometimes synchronicity arrives as serendipity. A book falls off a shelf with the exact chapter you needed. A friend cancels, creating just enough space for rest you didn't think to ask for. A door closes, clearing energy for a door you didn't dare knock on. These moments do not come from luck. They come from alignment. Alignment isn't perfection. It's coherence between heart, mind, and breath. When these three frequencies match, your field emits a signal. The universe picks it up and answers through improbable arrangement. There's a tenderness to this guidance. It never forces. It beckons. It nudges. It says just enough to make you curious, but not enough to remove your freedom. Synchronicity is a conversation, not a command. Pay attention to the texture of these moments. They carry a sensation, a soft internal click, like puzzle pieces finding their fit. Sometimes the hair on your arms rises. Sometimes your lungs feel wider. Sometimes there's a gentle warmth in the chest. Your body is a receiver. It knows. When you ignore these signals long enough, life grows louder. Outcomes become frictional. Doors slam instead of closing gently. The river you're meant to flow down goes dry, forcing you to move. Synchronicity is the polite whisper before the shove. You might ask, why doesn't the universe speak more clearly? Because clarity would eliminate growth. If every answer were delivered plainly, intuition would atrophy. Synchronicity doesn't just guide you, it trains you to listen, to feel, to trust. Trust is the muscle that synchronicity builds. Each time you follow a small nudge and it leads somewhere meaningful, you reinforce the inner listening. Eventually, you don't need giant signs. A single feather will do. Now consider people. Have you ever thought of someone and they texted a moment later, or met a stranger who echoed the exact lesson you were wrestling with? We often dismiss this as coincidence. But humans are transmitters. Thought is signal. Emotion is power. Desire is frequency. When two frequencies match, their timelines intersect. It's less miraculous than it is elegant. Synchronicities also mark transition points. When you are approaching a new chapter, signs cluster like birds, gathering before migration. The field reorganizes. Old patterns dissolve. New patterns invite. The feeling is unmistakable, like wind shifting direction. Pay attention to what repeats. Life repeats what you ignore. Life intensifies what you deny. Life amplifies what you align with. Synchronicity is a feedback loop between the visible and invisible. It shows you where your consciousness is headed before you arrive. Deny these signals, and it's like turning the radio off mid-song. You'll still move through life, but you'll miss the harmony. You'll feel alone. Even surrounded, you'll feel lost. Even stationary. Because guidance is not verbal, it's vibrational. When you start acknowledging synchronicity, something profound happens. More arrive. They multiply because attention is invitation. The field responds, like a friend leaning in closer when you whisper, "Tell me more." Soon, you'll see the subtle choreography everywhere. The timing of conversations, the unfolding of traffic lights, the way certain obstacles disappear in the last minute. It feels like life has hands gently shaping your path. And yet, there will be times when signs go quiet, not because you're abandoned, but because silence forces integration. Growth happens in the spaces between songs. If synchronicity is navigation, then intuition is steering. Presence is fuel. Trust is the engine. Fear is the brake. When synchronicities become frequent, your life stops feeling random. Patterns emerge. Destiny stops sounding dramatic. It feels practical, like gravity, always there. There's a deeper layer still. Synchronicities reveal your dialogue with the universe. The questions you ask not with words, but with vibration are answered through events, symbols, timing. Many try to speak to the universe with thought, but the universe listens to frequency, feelings, not sentences, intention, not grammar. So when something repeats, notice. When someone appears at the exact moment you need them, receive. When the same word shows up in multiple places, ask what it's pointing toward. You don't have to decode everything. Meaning reveals itself through living, not dissecting. Place your hand on your heart for a moment and breathe gently. Let the exhale lengthen. Feel how awareness shifts downward. into the body. This is where synchronicity begins. Not in thought, but in sensation. When your nervous system is calm, guidance becomes audible. And if you're wondering how to invite more synchronicity into your life, the answer is simple, but not easy. Slow down. Rush scrambles signal. Stillness clarifies it. When your breath is long and your presence is wide, you hear the radio of the universe clearly. Synchronicities remind you that you are not wandering blind. They remind you that the unseen is collaborating. They remind you that life is less mechanical and more conversational, and they whisper the most relieving truth of all. You are exactly where you need to be to hear this. So, the next time alignment winks at you through numbers, words, timing, or chance, don't shrug and look away. Smile inwardly. Whisper, "I see you." Every acknowledgement strengthens connection. Synchronicity is the language of soul-level navigation. Not loud, not linear, just unmistakably alive. And when you finally learn to trust its gentle pull, life becomes less about pushing through the dark and more about following the breadcrumbs of light, step by step, sign by sign, breath by breath. The path is always speaking, and now you're learning how to listen. 11. The reorganization phase delay is rearrangement. There's a strange and unsettling season that arrives for most of us on this path. It doesn't look dramatic or cinematic. Nothing collapses outwardly. Instead, everything slows. Messages go unanswered. Projects stall. Opportunities pause. People drift into silence. It feels like the forward momentum you were so proud of suddenly evaporates. The human mind interprets this as danger. I'm stuck. I'm doing something wrong. Nothing is happening. But if you soften your breath and look with different eyes, you'll notice something quieter, truer. Unfolding life isn't abandoning you. It's rearranging itself around you. Think of a theater between acts. The curtain falls. The audience murmurs. And behind the fabric there is movement, props shifting, lights recalibrating, actors changing costume. Nothing appears to be happening from your seat. Yet everything necessary for the next scene is being prepared. If you panic and run from the room, you'll miss the entire performance. The reorganization phase is like that. It demands patience, not force. When you raise your frequency through healing, boundary setting, forgiveness, or presence, your external world must reflect that shift. Reality responds slowly, like a large ship turning an open ocean. Old relationships loosen their grip. Jobs that once fit now feel tight around the ribs. Habits that once soothed suddenly taste stale. But the new energies, the aligned people, the meaningful opportunities, they don't always arrive instantly. There's a buffer, a gap, and inside that gap is grace. Most people interpret this gap as failure. But what you are feeling is friction, the tension between who you were and who you are becoming. Growth is not the clean swap of old for new. Growth is two layers rubbing together until one dissolves. The old identity sheds the way snakes shed skin, slowly, irritably, often with the sensation of being trapped. That trapped feeling is not regression. It's transformation happening under the surface. Imagine you've ordered furniture for your home. It's beautiful, sturdy, a reflection of your taste. When it's delivered, the delivery crew must rearrange your living room. Chairs shift to the hallway. Boxes stack in strange places. It looks messier than before, but that mess is a transition. That is what your life looks like during reorganization. Confusion isn't malfunction. It's rearrangement. The nervous system hates this. The mind is addicted to control. We are conditioned to equate movement with progress and stillness with failure. But progress sometimes sounds like silence. Stillness is where integration happens. You are not rewarded for speed. You are rewarded for resonance. And resonance takes time. Think about how roots behave. When a tree is preparing to grow taller, it doesn't shoot leaves upward immediately. It deepens its roots. From outside, nothing is happening. But underground, a vast architecture of stability is forming. The deeper the root, the higher the reach. If the tree panicked and started sprouting early, the first storm would snap it in half. Delayed growth is often protection. Life works the same way. During the reorganization period, projects feel heavy not because they're wrong, but because your frequency is updating. Relationships feel distant because energetic contracts are dissolving. Opportunities feel paused because the right ones require you to become someone slightly different before receiving them. If you rushed now, you'd sabotage the very future you're asking for. One of the most painful sensations in this phase is emptiness. You feel like something is missing, though you can't articulate what. That emptiness is not lack, it's clearing. Imagine deleting old files on a device. The device feels lighter. It has room for larger, more complex programs. Your psyche is the same. Space must be created before fulfillment can arrive. Emptiness is invitation. There's also a subtle grief letting go of paths you once assumed were meant for you. But every version of you imagines a different destiny. As you evolve, your destiny updates. The old fantasy dies. The new one hasn't formed. This is liminality, the hallway between doors. In liminality, nothing responds to force. You cannot push yourself into a chapter you're not ready to inhabit. You cannot drag old relationships into a frequency they didn't grow into. You cannot demand clarity from soil that's still rearranging its nutrients. Instead, the medicine here is surrender, not the limp surrender of resignation, but the active surrender of trust, the kind that says, if nothing is moving, something must be forming. The universe rearranges people too. Sometimes the person you needed yesterday becomes the distraction today. Sometimes the friend who supported you through darkness doesn't belong in your light. This is not cruelty, it's alignment. People are repositioned in your life like chess pieces, not to remove love, but to prevent limitation. During reorganization, you'll notice elevation triggers disconnection. It's not because you're better, it's because you're different. Frequencies split. It's physics, not judgment. This phase can also feel foggy. Ideas come without clarity. Desires hum without direction. You feel called, but not yet instructed. This fog is sacred. It prevents premature action. It forces internal listening. Fog teaches trust. In clear skies, anyone can walk. Fog requires intuition. Fog is where your inner compass is built. Many mistake this period for depression. Depression says, nothing matters. Reorganization whispers, something is coming. Rest. Pay attention to the tone. Dépression drain. Reorganization empties. One is collapse. The other is expansion in disguise. Restlessness is a symptom. Your nervous system senses movement outside your perception. Like animals becoming alert before a weather shift, that agitation doesn't mean hurry, it means prepare. Here's a secret. Most don't learn until much older. Life delays what would harm you prematurely. The partner who hasn't arrived would have met a version of you still shrinking. The money you're waiting for would have funded your self-sabotage. The opportunity you're craving would have magnified your insecurity. Delay is not denial, it's protection. Remember this. Nothing aligned ever arrives through panic. This is the perfect time to clean your internal house, to reflect, to journal, to breathe, to strengthen boundaries, to learn the texture of peace, because when the next wave of momentum arrives, you won't have time to build these muscles. Waves demand agility. Stillness builds it. Place a hand over your heart for a moment. Feel its rhythm. That pulse is proof that life continues without effort. Your breath is proof that movement happens even in stillness. Your body reorganizes every night without you asking. If biology trusts the process, maybe you can too. When the next chapter finally clicks into place, you'll look back and see how the pause was choreography, how people who drifted created space for those entering, how opportunities delayed until you had the spine to receive them, how silence allowed you to hear the faint whisper of intuition. And you will thank the slowness, because the slowness kept you safe. The slowness matured you. The slowness shaped discernment. All forward movement begins with inner rearrangement. So when life quiets, soften your shoulders, lengthen your exhale, whisper gently, "Nothing is wrong. Everything is repositioning," and trust the invisible hands shifting the furniture of your destiny. What feels like stuckness now is simply the moment before the curtain rises again. Becoming the frequency reality must answer. There comes a moment on this path when you finally understand that the world is not changed by squeezing it tighter, by wrestling outcomes into shape, or by forcing doors to open. The world shifts when the observer shifts. Reality bends around the quality of the one who is looking around your breath, your posture, your tone, the softness or tension living behind your ribs. Change doesn't begin outside the skin. It begins in the quiet space between inhale and exhale, in the tiny choice you make before habit takes the wheel. Each time you pause and breathe deeply, each time you let your shoulders melt downward, as if handing gravity your burdens, and gently ask, how would the wiser version of me respond? You move, not dramatically, not in fireworks, but by a single millimeter of consciousness, and a millimeter is everything. The earth tilts a fraction of a degree, and seasons change. Light bends a hair's breadth, and stars appear in a different pattern. Your inner trajectory works the same way. Small shifts in the witness create new horizons in the witnessed. We often wait for inspiration before choosing, believing that clarity must arrive first. But inspiration is not a prerequisite. It's a consequence. Choice is what opens the door. Inspiration walks in afterward. You choose first, trembling but honest. And the universe, recognizing your signal, sends breath and guidance to fill the space you created. The same is true for safety. We wait for life to become predictable, stable, gentle. We want proof before we trust. But safety is not offered by the world. It's generated within the nervous system. Trusting your breath is how you teach reality to soften around you. Calmness is contagious. When you cultivate inner steadiness, the external world eventually cooperates. Reality doesn't lead, it follows. You were never asked to be perfect. That's a myth born from frightened egos. Evolution is not linear mastery. It's remembering more often than you forget. It's returning to your breath one time more than your mind spins away. Each return weakens the gravity of the old identity. Each return is a thread woven into a new pattern. Eventually, the version of you that once needed discipline becomes the version that simply is your nervous system no longer addicted to chaos. Your body no longer bracing for impact. One day, you'll notice you are no longer trying to create a new reality. You are simply existing in a frequency that reality must reorganize itself around. You become the tuning fork. You become the anchor. You become the axis that the room quietly stabilizes around. And you'll wonder how you ever believed force was required, when resonance was always the real power. Tomorrow morning, when consciousness returns and the room is still dark, there will be a sacred gap before memory loads before your name, your story, your worries, and yesterday's fingerprints land on your shoulders. That gap is pure potential. Don't rush to collapse back into the character you were. Don't recite the script. Don't drag the costume back onto your bones. Place your hand gently over your heart and breathe as if you've just arrived on this planet. In that breath, whisper softly, "Today, I choose the version of me that's been waiting." Feel how the body responds even subtly. An inner door opens. The old identity steps back a few inches. The nervous system calibrates toward possibility. Most people miss that doorway every morning. They collapse into yesterday before today has a chance to speak. They run the same emotional programs, the same postures, the same thoughts, as if they woke only to reenact a script written long ago. But not you. Not anymore. Your job is not to predict the future or control its outcomes. Your job is to choose the frequency of the one who walks into it. The frequency is the architect. Matter is the masonry. So breathe slower than the world wants you to. Sit up 1 inch taller than your fear. Answer from the version of you who already knows how this chapter ends. Choose what aligns, not what numbs. And when you forget, when stress closes the throat and old habits clench the fists, remember, the doorway is always one breath away. Life doesn't respond to your demands. Life responds to your coherence. And when coherence becomes your resting state, something beautiful and quiet happens. Reality doesn't resist you anymore. It organizes around you, folding into shape like metal drawn to a magnet. People arrive without force. Opportunities knock without schedule. Synchronicities cluster like breadcrumbs leading you home. You are not meant to chase this life. You are meant to become the version of you it cannot ignore. So tonight, rest with dignity. Let your lungs release the dust of worn-out identities. Let your mind soften its grip. And when morning comes, before the old name returns, place your hand on the heart and whisper, "Today, I choose the self who's been waiting." Then stand up slowly, calmly, like a soul returning to its rightful place. And watch quietly, without forcing as reality bows back.